Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Clark. I'm the Senior Center Manager here at Rockdale Senior Services. Today we have a special presentation paying tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, Bernard N. Lee Jr. Bernard N. Lee Jr. is the oldest son of a career veteran of the U.S. Army. Together with his family, he traveled throughout the United States and Europe during his childhood. The places he lived, the people he met, and the stories he recalls are shared in his award-winning memoir series, A Look Back in Time, a memoir of a military kid in the 50s, Volumes 1 and Volume 2. Bernie attended Cameron Junior College in Oklahoma and Howard University in Washington, D.C. While at Harvard, Bernie joined the Army ROTC program, obtained a private pilot's license, earned a regular Army commission, and subsequently retired as a captain from the Army Reserves. After graduating from Howard with a BSEE, Bernie joined AT&T in New Jersey, where he worked until retirement in 2003. Following retirement, Bernie realized his lifelong dream of teaching high school students at Somerset Votech High School in New Jersey. Bernie is a director of the How Big Is Your Dream Foundation and a teacher of chess for students at Hills Academy and Real Kids Academy here in Conyers, Georgia. Bernie enjoys sharing his life stories. He is a frequent guest speaker on the internationally syndicated Tribe Family Channel radio podcast. Bernie is a member of the Atlanta Writers Club, the Georgia Writers Association, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, the African American Book Club, the Alliance of Independent Authors, the Military Writers Society of America, the American Overseas Schools Historical Society, and Local Post 77 of the American Legion. Bernie resides in Conyers, Georgia, with his wife of 44 years, Edwina Lee. On a final note, this program will be pre-recorded for future viewing. If you would like to leave a comment during the presentation, the chat icon will be open, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Bernard N. Lee Jr.
Well, thank you for that beautiful introduction, Suzanne. I am happy to be here with you today to share in this Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. We're going to get started with a background from Dr. King in his earlier years, and then we'll proceed from there. So please be patient. If you have a question or if you have a problem, use your chat function at the bottom of the screen to contact Suzanne. Okay, we'll get started now. Martin Luther King Jr. We'll start the presentation with a song from Howard University's choir. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. 1 Corinthians 13:11, King James Version. Martin Luther King Jr. shed his childhood at the early age of 15 when he entered Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, as a freshman. But you probably knew that. Young Martin was an exceptional child who attended Booker T. Washington High School, where he excelled in public speaking and debating. You may know that Martin's father and grandfather both attended Morehouse College. Martin took an entrance exam to enter Morehouse College at 15 years of age. How could he do that? Well, Martin skipped the 9th grade and the 12th grades in high school. Of course, he passed the exam, and they admitted him. Martin graduated from Morehouse College at 19 years of age. So, what did he do next? He enrolled in Crozier Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. At Crozier, young Martin continued to excel. His efforts were rewarded, and he was recognized by his peers. He was elected president of the senior class. Martin Luther King Jr. graduated from Crozier Theological Seminary with a Bachelor of Divinity degree in 1951. He attended Boston University on a scholarship and got his doctorate in divinity in 1955. While attending school in Boston, young Martin met Coretta Scott, a music student from the small town of Marion, Alabama. Who was Coretta Scott before she became Coretta Scott King? She was the third child in a family of 4 children. The Scott children attended a one-room elementary school 5 miles from their home. They were bused 9 miles past the local high school to attend Lincoln Normal School in Marion. The bus was driven by Coretta's mother, Bernice Scott. At Lincoln, Coretta became the leading soprano in the senior chorus. She complemented her singing by playing the trumpet and the piano. She was as gifted academically as she was musically and graduated from the school valedictorian in 1945. Her ambition was to pursue a successful career in the music industry. After high school, Coretta Scott enrolled in Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Her talents were recognized very soon afterwards. She won a scholarship to the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. You guessed it, the same city where Martin resided. She met Martin, and when he told her he was studying to become a minister, she knew she would have to put aside her own ambitions and dreams if she married him. I expect many of you have had to do the same and make that choice in your life, to put aside some of your dreams to support your partner or your children or someone else. If you have made your sacrifice, then you know how precious that is. The two talented strangers became a couple, were married in 1953, and after graduation, Coretta Scott moved with her husband to his new job as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. This is where Martin Luther King's civil rights story begins. The state of America in 1954 was much different than it is today. In many states, especially in the South, public facilities were separate for white and colored citizens. For example, Negro/colored citizens could not drink at public water fountains. Negroes could not order food at public fast food restaurants. Negroes could not eat in a public restaurant or a department store, at a train station, gas station, or any other public facility that served white customers. Negroes could not stay in hotels or use the bathroom facilities in most public establishments either. When they traveled, they slept beside the road and relieved themselves after dark in the woods. Negroes could not try clothes on in department stores which served whites. Negroes could not sit in sections at public outings, which were reserved for whites. They had to sit upstairs in the balcony at most theaters. Negroes could not ride on buses or trains in the same section as white passengers. They had to go to the back of the bus and give up their seats when white passengers boarded. The list of what Negroes could not do is much longer, but that last one was the straw that broke the camel's back. The Montgomery bus boycott tested that piece of discrimination.
On your feet. That was the day that we started a bus protest which literally electrified the nation. And that was the day when we decided that we were not going to take segregated buses any longer. And you know, when we planned the bus boycott, we said if we could just get about 50 or 60% of the Negroes of Montgomery not to ride buses, this would be an effective boycott. I think that whole day we found 8 Negroes on the buses. And from that day on, that boycott was more than 99.9% effective. I remember that Monday morning when I was subpoenaed to be in court, the chief defendant. Many things ran through my mind. And I started thinking about the people. All day long trying to think of something to say to the people. Finally, I tried to talk. My words were fumbling a bit. Let us fight passionately and unrelentingly for the goals of justice and freedom. Let's be sure that our hands are clean in the struggle. Let us never fight with falsehood and violence and hate and malice, but always fight with love so that when the day comes that the walls of segregation has completely crumbled in Montgomery, we will be able to live with people as their brothers and sisters.
The state of America in 54 was much different than it is today. And Dr. King and the boycott in Montgomery changed that. The boycott lasted 381 days. In the end, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that public transportation and public facilities must treat all U.S. citizens the same. The victory, which was celebrated in Montgomery, vaulted Dr. King into the national spotlight. And with light comes heat. After the buses were desegregated, someone fired a bullet through the front door of the King's home. Dr. King took his family from Alabama back to Atlanta, Georgia, so that they would be safe. Why do you believe Dr. King risked his life to challenge a bus company in the South? Well, I'll tell you. As a junior at Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta, young Martin won first place in a speech contest sponsored by the Negro Elks Club in Dublin, Georgia. On the ride home to Atlanta, he and his teacher were ordered by the bus driver to stand so white passengers who got on could sit down. The ride lasted 143 miles, more than 2.5 hours. Dr. King recalled the incident and said, "I was the angriest I have ever been in my life." So, standing for 2.5 hours, now that gave him some motivation to change a law that discriminated. In 1957, Dr. King and a determined group of ministers formed an organization known as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC, in Atlanta, Georgia. Its mission was to harness the moral authority and organize Black churches to conduct nonviolent protests in the service of civil rights reform. In 1958, Dr. King released his first book, Stride Toward Freedom. In 1959, he released second book, The Measure of a Man. It contained the sermon, What is a Man? In the 1960, Dr. King used the nonviolent protest method perfected by Mahatma Gandhi from India to free his country from British rule. The backlash followed. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and his associates wiretapped Dr. King and the members of his group, and they used the intelligence to pressure him to give up the fight. What was Dr. King's response? No, he did not give up the fight. He fought on. In 1963, the SCLC Civil Rights Organization organized a march on Washington for jobs and freedom from racial discrimination. 250,000 people attended the march. It was that gathering that Dr. King gave his speech about fairness. I have a dream. We'll listen to that speech now.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yes. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. Yes. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
What happened to Dr. King's dream? Tragic incidents in history conspired to kill Dr. King's dream. In November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated while riding in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Death attempted to kill the civil rights movement. It failed. In 1964, Vice President Johnson was sworn in as president. He worked with Dr. King's team to complete and pass a sweeping new Civil Rights Act. Also in 1964, Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his contributions to better mankind through nonviolent protests for civil rights. Those were great accomplishments for that time. On March 3rd, 1965, the SCLC and other groups marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, and were met with fierce resistance from the Alabama State Police. Atlanta's own John Lewis was one of the marchers. They were beaten with clubs, bit by police dogs, and swept off their feet with water hoses, kicked, stomped, and brutalized. John Lewis sustained head injuries, which he carried with him the rest of his life. The incident, which became known as Bloody Sunday, cemented the public sentiment for reform and resulted in President Johnson passing the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The new law opened up the voting booth to colored Americans who had been discouraged from exercising their voting rights. Later on, March 25, 1965, with National Guard protection, Dr. King, John Lewis, and the other marchers crossed the bridge safely. Dr. King stood on the courthouse steps at the Alabama State House and delivered his now famous "How long, not long" speech.
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? Somebody's asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men? I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, yes, sir, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, because truth crushed earth will rise again. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. Yes, sir. Because no lie can live forever. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. How long? Because you shall reap what you sow. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. How long? Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yes, yet that scaffold sways the future. Yes. Behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. How long? Not long. Because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Yes, how long? Not long. Not long. Because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Yes, he's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Yes, sir. He's loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. Yes, his truth is marching on. Yes, sir. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
In 1967, Dr. King spoke at the Riverside Baptist Church in New York City. King spoke in opposition to the Vietnam War. His anti-war speech alienated many of his earlier supporters. King believed the money spent on the war robbed the country of the scarce resources we needed to take care of our poorest citizens. In 1964, Dr. King and the Civil Rights Group organized another campaign, this time for Economic Bill of Rights for poor people. The campaign planned a Poor People's March on Washington. On April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King gave his last speech. It was entitled, "I Have Been to the Mountaintop." I'll share that with you now.
Yes, sir. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
This is a CBS News special report.
Dan Rather reporting for CBS News from New York. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death by an assassin late today as he stood on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. King had planned to lead another civil rights march in Memphis next Monday. We got the latest on the story now from Russ Hodge, news director of WREC-TV in
this ends my segment of the Martin Luther King Jr. presentation. I would like to thank Suzanne Clark and the Olivia Haydel Senior Center for inviting me to share my thoughts with you today.
Thank you all for joining and celebrating with us today. A special thank you to our presenter, Bernard N. Lee Jr., who I've been very proud to have known for years. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your memories, your experiences growing up in the civil rights movement. Thank you very much for this special program. Everyone have a great day.